på listen. Nils, are you there?
Yes, I believe I'm there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I hope everyone else can hear you as well. But I suppose so. If not, there'll probably come some comments in the chat forum. Okay. I don't know if I can make you. Let me just see if I can make you bigger. I don't think I can right now. This technical stuff is a bit beyond me. But anyways, people can see you and they can hear you, so that's the most important thing. Let me just get my questionnaire for our discussion. First of all, welcome. I'm very happy that you could join us today.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here, and in particular in lieu of the fact that we've been trying to organize this meeting for a long time. So yeah. I'm a bit saddened that I can't meet all of the, I think, almost 70 participants yes. In person. It would have been fantastic to get to see and possibly even get to speak to some of you.
Yes.
But still, it's great that you managed to get this underway, Eva.
Perfect. And hopefully we will have the opportunity to meet in real life at some point, because we're so lucky that you are actually situated in Copenhagen. I mean, what are the odds of that? And so at some point during these next 4 years, when we'll be working with this field, hopefully there will be an opportunity to get together. But first of all, I would I shortly touch the subject in my introduction, because I was telling the participants about this amazing report that WHO published last year. And I have to say that for someone like me who has been interested in this field for like a decade, very long time, it was such a wonderful feeling when I realized that WHO were planning to publish this report, because it really does. It says Nils Fietje is on the screen as soon and as long as he's speaking. Okay, excellent, good. No, that with this report from WHO, it was suddenly this kind of legitimacy about working with this field. Suddenly it wasn't just all of us happy culture people saying, oh, you know, culture is just fantastic and can do this and that. There's actually this kind of a go from a different angle, which is wonderful for me. And also when we have to go and talk to our politicians, it does give it more credibility when we have WHO as kind of a backup for that. So that's, I was very happy to hear about the report and to read the report. But first of all, I'd like to, first of all, ask you to tell us a bit about who you are, what do you do, what is the role of the unit that you work for in WHO?
Sure, great, thank you. And I'm very pleased to hear that you found the report to be that kind of stamp of approval, because that's, I think, that was very much the intention. And so I'm glad that, and we hear this quite a bit, that the report has kind of moved the conversation around arts and health perhaps up one step, which is great to hear. So yeah, so I work at at WHO Europe, which is the regional headquarters, the European regional headquarters for WHO. So it comprises 53 member states, so it's far bigger than geographical Europe. There's also the Commonwealth of Independent States, the former Russian or former Soviet countries are involved in that, Central Asia, etc. So quite a number of diverse member states. And within that office, I'm part of a new unit, which actually is just beginning to form this year, which is the Behavioral and Cultural Insights Unit. And there's a large range of activity that we do within that unit, but I'll be honest, that one small part of what we do is the work that Andrea, my colleague, and myself are involved in, which is on arts and health. And that's, as I say, it's a small focus of the work that we do, but something that we think has a lot of promise. I'm very much convinced that in 15 or I mean 20 or maybe if we're lucky 15 or possibly even less years time, arts and health will be in many countries, will be part of the general portfolio, part of the general repertoire of health interventions and health planning and health systems. I'm a firm believer that is eventually going to happen, and WHO should play a role in that, and should also, prepare itself for the moment when that begins to become a reality. So that's, I think, the rationale for why we've, within this unit on behavioral and cultural insights, we've decided to focus some of our energy and resources on this I think very important topic. Okay,
and can you tell us a bit about what the background was for creating the report? I mean, what was the rationale behind working with it? Was it, did someone call you and say, listen, this is a really interesting field, or did you, how did it begin?
Yeah, no, so I mean, this has been on our radar for a while, and obviously even before the report was published, there was a couple of years leading up to the report. There were several meetings about it. We at that point were running a project that you can see on my background, Cultural Context of Health and Wellbeing, which was looking at various cultural, contextual kind of elements around health, and arts and health was mentioned in the context of an expert group that helped us with this project several times. So it kind of bubbled up organically within the advisory context of WHO probably 5 years ago or so, and since that time we've been kind of trying to figure out what would be the most useful first move within WHO in this field. And so we had a kind of consultative meeting that we organized, I think in 2018. And on the back of that, we commissioned a report from Daisy Fancourt, who was the kind of principal author on the report. And in conjunction with her and the work that she's doing at the University College London, the report started to take on shape and was finally published at the end of 2019. But no, it wasn't a case of somebody coming to us. It was definitely something that that began to foment and bubble up within WHO. Okay,
organic growth. We like that.
Yeah.
Okay, and tell us a bit about the report. I mean, I've sent it out as to the participants, but I'm sure that they haven't probably all read it as closely as I have. But could you tell us a bit about how the report is structured, and maybe also about how the most important findings that you had in the work with the report?
Yeah, I'm actually I'm wondering. I'm just going to pull up a link to a summary of the report, which we also published alongside the report itself, and I'm going to see if I can paste that into the chat field here. So for those participants who might not have the time to read the whole report, which is perfectly understandable, the summary might be a good entry point.
Excellent, thank you.
So the report is kind of is intended as a really broad overview of the evidence, the latest state of play regarding the evidence, and it's not intended as a systematic review. So we really try to just amass as much of the research evidence as is feasible within the context of the time and resources that we could allocate towards the report. But in so doing, I think we cover either directly or indirectly over 3,000 pieces of research on this topic. And we're not, the report, it does occasionally kind of highlight excellent forms of evidence. So some studies or some pieces of evidence around certain interventions that are highly robust. But in general, the point isn't to judge whether or not one piece of evidence is better or worse than another, but just to kind of lay out the landscape and to encourage researchers and policymakers to kind of delve into that research. So if somebody's interested in chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and wants to see whether or not there have been some interventions, arts and health interventions to treat the symptoms thereof, they can look at our report and find out some of the research and some of the work that's been done in this field, and they'll come on music therapy and singing for breathing, for instance, and so forth. So it's got a very broad scope, and it kind of also doesn't limit itself to a certain type of intervention. So it really looks at the whole gamut of healthcare and health intervention, from prevention to promotion, from management to treatment. We didn't want to set any limits at this point. And as such, I think we've created a resource that I hope will help, as I said, researchers, but also policymakers as a kind of really useful first entry point. I think the problem a lot of times when you're trying to grapple with a new subject is, what is the one thing that you should read? What is the one place where you start? And I think I hope we've created that one first step, as it were, for anybody who wants to get a quick overview of the field. But I think crucially also the report, by amassing all this evidence, it also, I think, can make a statement about arts and health generally. So I think we're not in the business of saying every single arts and health intervention has promise and every single arts and health intervention is fantastic. But we do, with the report, want to emphasize that there are many arts and health interventions that are highly effective, that have good evidence behind them, and that as a consequence, the field itself is worth investing in, and the field itself is worth paying attention to, because of some basic factors, like the fact that the interventions often are very low cost, the fact that they have very low or very high retention rates. People who participate in arts and health interventions are much less likely to jump off them, and are much more likely to continue with them. So they have very low risk. They have some very high benefit to cost benefit kind of rationales behind them. And that's why we try. That's what we really wanted to promote with the report. And so we have a few kind of recommendations or considerations that the report highlights, and that we are very keen for policymakers to kind of at least have a look at, so that they can sensitize themselves to the potential promises of arts and health interventions.
Excellent, very interesting. I think you have a very acute point about this, that people who participate in these different interventions, that often you see that because they're voluntary, it's not something that they are forced to do, but they actually do because they would like to, and because they feel that there is a benefit for them in doing it. That's one of the reasons why it actually has quite a big effect. We can see in some of the arts and prescription programs that we're going to look into later, that's one of the things that the participants, they actually emphasize. I do this because it makes sense for me, and not because someone tells me that I have to. And that creates a whole different way of dealing with things, and gives such good results.
So I'm just gonna jump in here real quick, because I think that's a very important point, and very true. Although it sometimes also gets used as a form of criticism by saying, especially in relation to the evidence, by saying, well, this works because people are signing up to it because they are already believers, or they are already bought into whatever, dancing for Parkinson's, or drawing for in relation to depression, or whatever. But in fact, there's also very good evidence that a lot of people participate in these interventions without being predisposed towards them, without being somebody who has always enjoyed dancing or always enjoyed drawing. And we've collected, several stories, for instance, and maybe that's another thing that I'll post actually in a moment in the chat box. Stories of individuals who have come to participate in some of these interventions, who are not predisposed towards them, who didn't initially think it would help, who didn't think that they would continue in those interventions, but to whom it was suggested by either their GP or their partner or some other person. So I do think there is also a huge amount of scope there for these interventions to work for people who don't necessarily feel themselves drawn towards them.
Exactly. One of the points I made in my introduction was also that this can also be a way for many of the cultural institutions to actually get introduced to or introduce themselves to a new group of users, people who wouldn't traditionally participate in their activities. So it's also some kind of a audience development program you can think of in those terms. And it makes it quite interesting also from, I think, a democratic point of view, that we have this new way of actually making one of our welfare states institutions more available to everyone. Everyone pays for this culture, so everyone should also use it. In Denmark, I don't know how it is in other countries, but in Denmark, there was a study a couple of years ago that showed that around 1/3 of the population actually never really used the cultural institutions. And this can be a way of actually gaining access to this group of people, not that you have to force them to use the culture if they don't want to, but to introduce them to the possibilities that there is within the cultural institutions. So I think it's kind of a win-win situation we have.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. One also that we stress within the report as part of the policy recommendations, that we want to encourage both sectors, as it were, both the arts, both the health sector, health and well-being sector, to kind of be aware of the potential benefits of arts and health, but also for the culture sector to capitalize on that connection. So to be able to say to museums, for instance, this can also be part of your remit. It can be part of your remit to think of the potential health benefits that a guided museum tour for people with dementia can potentially have, and to focus on that as part of your strategic development. So that cross-sectoral importance, I think, is one that we really want to push, in particular in light of like the Sustainable Development Goals and all these kind of political agendas, where cross-sectoral involvement is something people are really pushing and really trying to accelerate. And the connection between arts and science and art really is not something that you get very frequently on the political stage.
Exactly. Yeah, we're getting there though. Okay, have you had any how has the report been received? I mean, I know that it's been received very positively here in Denmark, because we're all excited about this new agenda. Have you had any reactions from how has the report been received?
So I'd probably kind of have there's probably three different types of reactions. There's those who are on a political level. There are those who are kind of bought in already, who are very pleased. I guess you and many of your colleagues in Denmark who've been pushing for this agenda for a while. They fall into that category. They're quite pleased about it. Then there also are, I mean, I should say that in places like Denmark, Sweden, the UK, and a handful of other countries in Europe, arts and health is something that rings a bell with, even people on the kind of political level. In the vast majority of the rest of the European region, the WHO European region, this is completely new. It's a completely new concept, and even within WHO, there's a lot of people who aren't familiar with the field and the fact that it's been around for a number of years. So another reaction has been kind of a certain amount of surprise and generating, I think, positive interest. I think a lot of people are drawn inherently to the idea that that arts can, has an impact on health, that art and health are linked in some way, whether it's through bespoke and specific interventions, or just generally by cultural participation. I think a lot of people understand that connection inherently, and I think the report produced a moment in a lot of those people of kind of clarity of saying, oh yeah, well, that makes sense. You know, I've always kind of suspected that, and here's some evidence to back it up. So those have been quite positive, I think. Those reactions, but obviously, whenever you do something of this nature, you're also going to have critics. So we have had some criticisms, particularly from the kind of academic side of the equation, where people are a little bit disappointed with the approach that we took, in so much as we decided not to explicitly and consistently judge evidence. And I think some people would have liked to have seen a kind of more robust, more systematic approach to evaluating the evidence. And I think I accept that criticism, but it simply wasn't what we set out to do. And I think it's something that needs to happen on a continual basis. I don't think somebody cannot come out with a report about arts and health generally that is a kind of systematic review of all of arts and health. It's kind of like saying a systematic review of all of biomedical, all of biomedicine. You know, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense. So I think that's just something that has to keep happening in the background.
Okay, but that's an interesting point about this whole the academic view of it, because I also mentioned earlier that we still have this clash of how we actually work with measuring and evaluating and creating evidence in this field, because there is a clash between the qualitative and the quantitative, and what is it we actually want to measure, what results do we want to see, and those results can be very different whether you are from a department that works with classical health interventions, whether you work with maybe getting people back into the job system as quickly as possible, or if you work with sort of the purely cultural setting. So this whole there's a whole field of actually developing new ways of creating evidence that actually makes sense within this field. I know that Daisy Fancourt, you mentioned, that is kind of the primary force behind the report, that she published a book a couple of years ago about how actually to create evaluate these kind of projects. And I bought the book. I haven't read it yet, I have to say, but I will, because it is really a field that creates a lot of unnecessary tension, I'd say, because it doesn't necessarily make sense to do it one way or the other. You have to actually find some models that make sense within this frame.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's and it's also a tension that we came up against, and one of the reasons why we decided not to be too stringent around the types of evaluations that certain interventions that we cover in our report used, because if we had been too strict, we would have ended up with a very narrow perspective of arts and health. So that is a challenge. I think it breaks down in two ways, though. So one of the ways is the one that you described, where arts and health is it needs different models of evaluation, ones that look towards qualitative approaches more sustainably and have those accepted a little bit more. That's true, and that will probably also require a certain rethinking within the kind of medical public health profession. And I think that's something that's beginning to happen in any case. There's more and more conversations around the value of qualitative evidence. But on the other hand, I think it also requires a little bit of I think one of the problems that we have is a lot of people who create these interventions are artists, are first and foremost artists or practitioners within the art arena, and they're just not used to speaking the language of evaluation in the way that public health professionals are. They just don't speak the language. And that's a question of training to some extent, and Daisy Fancourt has tried to do that, for instance, with that book on evaluation. But I would say, at the end of the day, the corona crisis has taught us that evidence, even within the public health sphere, is very mutable and often very gray, and whether or not washing your hands for 21 seconds actually has any impact transmission in regard to COVID is incredibly difficult to prove, and I think there are certain things that we're doing within our COVID response that make sense and that are part of a basket of reasonable things to be doing, but to actually have bolt-on evidence in these complex situations is incredibly difficult, and that's the same space that arts and health occupies.
Yes, definitely. I just want to remind people that if you have any questions for Nils, please ask them now, because he won't be joining the later session. So please feel free to ask questions via the chat. I still have some questions though. Can you? This is a very big thing to ask of you, but when we want to start initiating these arts and health projects in the municipalities, can you point out some of the most important issues that we should remember to sort of to consider when we begin, throwing ourselves into this new area? I mean, both from what you've learned through the report, but also with your work in general. What are sort of the main what's important to remember when we begin working this way?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question, and actually one that we're grappling with. So I'm not going to be able to give you a checklist here. I'm not even sure that I can give you a huge amount of good advice, but I will say that we're currently working with Region Midtjylland, and I think Mikkel Otto is on the call. I saw his name on the list of participants. So he's one of our partners. And we're also working with partners in Finland and Romania and Belgium to actually roll out an arts and health intervention, and a small-scale arts and health intervention. We have funding from the Nordic Culture Fund for this, and to learn from that experience, because I think we at WHO we don't really have a huge amount of first-hand experience of rolling these types of interventions out, in across different countries, for instance. So that's something that is definitely expertise that we lack at this point, and something that a gap that we're hoping to fill with this project. So at the end of this project, which is going to take about a year, coronavirus permitting, but that we hope to have some kind of toolkit or I mean, again, it won't be a checklist, but it will be something that provides some sort of guidance for countries, but also more specifically for let's say regions within countries or municipalities who are interested in developing arts and health interventions or implementing arts and health interventions, and what that requires, and what some of the potential stumbling blocks are, etc. So I don't want to kind of rush to give you any advice that I don't really have yet, but it's definitely something that that we hope to have more on. And I should say that, I mean, this is probably this is also an open invitation to yourself and other colleagues who are in the thick of doing this kind of work, to work with us and to kind of contact me and to say, well, here's some of the learning that we have. In fact, maybe we can at some point put together some kind of meeting of across, so not just in Denmark, but also across other countries of people or groups that have been working on arts and health who can help us with exactly this problem.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of a best practice advisory, something that we can learn from each other's experiences, so we don't have to start all over again every time we start looking at these projects. There's a question come in. One participant is asking if we know of any good results in interventions where the participants are actually forced to participate. So when it's not voluntary interventions. I don't know if, because it's on the program in one of the municipalities in this spring. I don't know if you know of any forced project, so to speak,
Yeah,
where people are sort of they have to maybe participate in order to get their the money from the municipality or something like that.
To be honest, I'm not sure that we. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there are kind of small projects or attempts to try and I mean, the closest that I can think of where this might have happened, and I don't know, is perhaps with some of the work on culture and prescription in Sweden, in Skåne. But I don't think they would have gone to the extent of kind of withholding subsidies or things like that. No. Social support if people don't participate in certain interventions. So to some extent, all these types of social prescribing initiatives are voluntary in the same way that it's voluntary for you to take your medication if you're prescribed certain drugs. And I guess that's part of the argument, is that is where the arts and health, where the strength is, because people are more likely to actually participate in something that they get kind of social a social experience out of, and where they can make social connections, build social cohesion, and do something that's far bigger than just the specific health impact that it might have.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I think I've been around the questions that I actually wrote down, but I'd like to hear, I mean, what you were just telling me about this new report, or this manual, or what you will call it, about evaluation that you would be working on. What's next in your job in this field? What's happening?
Yeah, so this is a kind of the main bits of activity around arts and health that we have planned at the moment, that we have funding for. I mean, one of the fundamental issues around this topic is that it's not core WHO activity, so we're kind of reliant on raising research or implementation funding for this kind of activity, and that's where the Nordic Culture Fund has kindly supported us. So that's definitely on the agenda for next year. But we're also very aware of the fact that a lot of people have talked to us about the kind of health economics of arts and health, and I've talked a little bit about this, and our report goes into that a little bit by making the claim that arts and health interventions can be very cost effective. But I think that's something that we want to highlight a little bit more, and perhaps write something on that, because I think that's always in the political field, that's obviously something that politicians are very keen to know about, to know that singing or dancing for Parkinson's has a cost benefit, is a potential best buy when it comes to Parkinson's interventions, as an example. So that's something that we want to raise some funding for, in order to be able to commission a report on the health economics of arts and health, to be able to publish as well. But generally speaking, I think those are two kind of quite specific things that we want to pursue. But I think we're very much in the process of trying to bring together partners and countries and people who work on this in this area. So and that's kind of why I'm spending a lot of time talking about the report and getting people to try and collaborate and talk to us about the work that they're doing, because I think that's a platform that WHO uniquely has, bringing different people from different countries together.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. That is quite a good spot you're situated in for doing this. And obviously we from Kultur Metropolen will hopefully be able to contribute to that work. And you earlier mentioned that you would very much like to continue having an open dialogue about these things, because it's kind of we can both benefit from, both parties can benefit from having this communication about what is the progress and what are the challenges, and do we have new ways of, for example, measuring or evaluating or creating evidence about the field. So that's really nice for us to know that we have you as a sparring partner in this. I can see there's a new question that's come in, but it's more, it isn't so much for you. I think we'll wait with answering this question till we come to the last part of the debate. So I just wanted to make sure if anyone else has any questions for Nils, this is the moment, because there's only 2 minutes left of his busy schedule here. And while I'll just wait and see if anything will be popping up. How do you have any sort of feeling or any views on how Denmark is doing? I mean, is there more activity in Denmark than in the other countries, or is less, or how are we doing in Denmark?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I can't objectively say whether or not this is this is certainly there's been a lot of interest in the report from Denmark, and that might be a function of the fact that we are in Copenhagen. We're based in Copenhagen, but I think of all the countries that have responded, Denmark is one of the ones that have been most interested. I would say that that's probably a function of the fact that there's a lot of activity being generated in this field. So I think there are other countries that are perhaps a little bit further along with the arts and health agenda, and I count Sweden definitely as one of those, and the UK is probably within Europe is at the forefront of social prescribing and arts and health work. But I think Denmark and Scandinavia in general, the Nordics, I would say are very interested in this field. That was one of the reasons why we launched the report in Finland, because both the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Culture were very keen to be part of that launch, and have consistently shown strong interest in the confluence of culture and health. Okay. So Denmark I think it's definitely a moment right now within Denmark for arts and health, and I'm very glad to see it, and I'm hopeful that we can be a part of that. I'm also going to press, just copy pasted some links here, which I'm going to press enter on. So those are 3 different YouTube videos that we've released over the last few months to do with arts and health, which I think are really lovely stories of individuals who have benefited from arts and health interventions, and would love for you to watch them and to share them with others as well. Perfect.
There's popped a question up. What's the greatest challenge onward, and how fast do you think the field of health science and cultural arts will merge and move forward? Looking into the...
I don't think there's one single greatest challenge. I think there's a lot of challenges there's a lot of different challenges in different countries and in different cultural settings and political settings. I mean, for us at WHO, the biggest challenge is still to raise awareness about the arts and health. So that's something, and to demonstrate that this isn't just something for Western health systems, right? That this isn't a kind of nice to have. I think you said something about the whipped cream on the cake, or if I understood correctly. But for us, it really is predominantly still to demonstrate that you can do these things anywhere in the WHO European region, and in fact in the world, and without a huge amount of cost and with immediate benefit. So that's still the biggest challenge for us. But I think in other contexts, it's probably more about like more specific challenges about working together between sectors, breaking down certain silos, raising funds, diverting, questions around evaluation, more advanced questions. And obviously, the further you get, the more those kind of multiply.
Yeah. Okay. Good answer. Okay, well, we've come to the end of our session, and Nils, it's been a great pleasure, and I think that the participants have learned something new and have created new interest in this whole field. Thank you very much for the links that people can go in and look into. We will stay in touch, definitely, and help each other to develop this whole new field. So thank you very much for participating.
Thank you very much for having me. It's really nice to be able to share this work, and it's always wonderful to hear such enthusiasm for it. As a final thing, I'm just going to leave my email address in the chat. I think probably most people will have it through the emails that you've circulated, but
Yes.
just in case, if anybody wants to get in touch, please do.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.